Amir Allam, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
It's going to be great. I'm glad you said yes. I'm glad we found the time. Been hanging out in Salt Lake City for a couple weeks now, and I have been training at your gym, which has been great. 10th Planet Salt Lake City. The first day I went, I thought no one else was going to show up. I was real nervous because I think it was like the 4th of July, and I was like, there's no way. But Instagram told me there was a way. It said there's class. Luckily, someone did show up, and I was able to start training with you guys.
How many people showed up? I can't even remember.
I don't think you were there on that first day because it was like a fundamentals class.
Okay.
And it was like, but there were probably like 6 people there. It's a good group of guys you got out here.
Yeah, they're all uniquely weird. It's the true 10th Planet way. Sort of a little bit nerdy, a little bit weird, and very vicious.
Yes. Yeah, I think those are good adjectives. Thanks for throwing those in.
Yep, happy.
Man, I love Salt Lake City. It's just a great place to be.
It's beautiful.
You did not grow up here, is that correct?
No, I grew up mostly in the Middle East, Abu Dhabi. I was in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for a little while. I moved to Oklahoma when I was 13. And then I moved to LA when I was, 21, 22. Moved to Alaska when I was sort of late 20s, and been here about 5 years now.
So you really picked this place. You've really seen a lot of different places and said Salt Lake City.
No, not exactly. I like Salt Lake City, for the record. It is a lovely place. I can leave my house on a bike and be in the mountains in 5 minutes. It's beautiful. It's not yet too crowded. But no, I'm so overeducated that I'm only qualified for maybe 5 or 10 jobs a year in the world. And so you just go wherever you can find one.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this an interesting part of your bio as I was coming here, and I was like, man, I hope we get it on the podcast because, well, tell us a little about what you do.
Yeah, so I am a research assistant professor at the University of Utah. I study earthquakes for a living. And jiu-jitsu has always been not exactly a hobby, more like a second career to balance the insanity of the academic world.
Which came first?
They've always been coeval with me. So I started wrestling at age 13 or so, 12 or 13. And I was already very interested in science and math and academics in general. I was a straight A kind of student. And I've just never been able to do one without the other. I've never been able to devote my time to some sort of mental aspect and ignore my body, or vice versa. I mean, really, I dive down a lot of rabbit holes randomly. So I do many things. I picked up many skills. I'm the kind of guy who just can't sit still.
Okay. So this is going to be challenging for you, a podcast like this. Although, are we doing something?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. That's a good question. You're going to show me, because I actually don't know anything about podcasts.
Okay.
I've listened to a few historical podcasts, which are more like lectures, but I don't know anything about this kind of a podcast.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. I mean, it's very relaxed. Mostly for me, I've said it's been an excuse for me to meet people in the places we go because we work from home and own our own company. And we're traveling constantly, and so it's not like I'm going to bars trying to. I don't do that kind of social life really, and so a podcast is like let me scout through literally the location tag of the city I'm going to and be like, that person looks real cool, that person looks cool, and start putting out feelers to see if they'll come on a podcast. And once you start doing quite a few of those and they're half decent, people start saying yes a lot more often, which has been just phenomenal. And now I've got pockets of friends in all these different cities all over the place. But there's no rules to this like format of podcast. Okay. Like I think I told you, like I tell people
this
like
is the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Well, this is Nam. Anything could happen in here.
Anything could happen under the least amount of pressure possible, because who even knows if someone's listening?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
A few people listen.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
So hopefully I don't say anything ridiculously stupid. Definitely don't want to say anything incriminating.
Sure.
I don't know. Are these admissible as
evidence? Do you have incriminating things that you're worried about saying?
I've certainly broken the law on more than one occasion.
Well, statute of limitations possibly. Is good. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the statute? It depends on the crime.
It depends on the crime.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about like, you
so I'm trying to think, when
somewhere.
did I last murder someone? I might be okay on that one.
This not this type of show. This is like you're thinking of the crime thriller podcast. Oh man, that'd be wild if I found out that you had all these crime stories and then we just went there.
No, I don't have any crime stories. I guess I can tell you about the time I stole a car in South Africa on a research trip.
Oh, stole?
Well, I mean, I was more like an accomplice to the crime, but I was riding in the stolen car as it was crashed in a roundabout.
Wow.
So I've had a lively existence
Sure.
on this planet in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, I tend to find that is the case with the various moonheads I've talked to. I mean, for anybody who's crazy enough to follow jiu-jitsu through all the way to getting a black belt, there's a good amount of crazy behind that. And then anybody who is turning that into actually teaching and owning a gym and things like that, you've got just the next level.
Well, and then 10th Planet on top of that.
Yeah.
There's a serious next level involved with 10th Planet. Actually, you say you've met a few moonheads. I think most of the moonheads view me as kind of a dork, as kind of a straight man.
Because of the professor role?
Yeah, like I'm almost part of the system to them. But for other scientists, I'm way too edgy and crazy and, like the out of control rock star.
Gotcha.
So it's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to not fit in, I think. I mean, it's one thing that I've talked about on this podcast before is that I think that the problem is that too many people make their identity like one thing that they're into, and I find myself really bored by that.
Yeah.
And I've gotten in trouble for not in trouble, but I've had 10th Planet people say like don't make fun of people who put on Instagram on their handle like 10p Kyle or whatever, but I do make fun of that because I feel like you should be all of the different things that you're into and just go for it. Like you should be a total enigma of various things, and none of them reflect your identity. But even I get like obsessed about things every now and then. So people who have listened to this podcast have watched me as I started jiu-jitsu, and then all of a sudden everything was a metaphor towards jiu-jitsu. But that's because I learned so much from doing it. But pretty soon it's going to be that like everything's a metaphor towards bow hunting, and then people are going to have to deal with that.
Right, you got the bow hunting hat on.
I just picked up.
You said it's never going to leave your head.
It's never leaving.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can lose my hair, just fine, and no one will even know the difference. I just have to keep the ponytail in the back, kind of,
Yeah, I learned about the basics of genetics when I was about 10 years old, and I saw that all of the men and some of the women on both sides of my family were bald. So I made peace very early on with
That's good.
baldness. I
You
started
had
shaving
closure.
my head really at age 10.
Yeah,
So
it happens to the best of us.
yeah,
But you never know when it's going to strike.
it was early for me. I started losing my hair at age 23.
Yeah,
So
I'm past that point, and I think I'm getting close to past the point where you start to notice it, and it gets nerve-wracking. So
hopefully you have a
Fingers crossed.
friend who can tell you when you're just like a sad bald guy holding
Right.
on to past glory.
true.
I've had to be that friend to at least 5 or 6 people.
Well, I feel like when I go do jiu-jitsu, I want all my hair gone. I get real frustrated about the fact that after every roll or after every drill, I got to put my hair back up. But the girl over there really digs it, and so I keep it, long.
You got to get into bald men. That's just what you got to do.
Oh, that's our producer, Andrea. Strangers Worth Meeting's producer. You've been on a couple episodes lately, so they know who you are. The people. I talk about you all the time. I can't not, so.
So he brought some random
I brought a
girl
rando.
over here. So that was nice of him.
But it's supposed to be, I always heard that it was from your mother's side. So I don't actually know my maternal grandfather.
No,
so I
that's
don't know if
right.
it's bald or not.
So male pattern baldness specifically, that's one type of baldness. It's the most prevalent. That is definitely maternally inherited. But there are other kinds as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that, because, I just don't know on that one. It could be total toss-up. I have no idea.
Looks like you're about to discover.
We are. The hat stays on. No one will notice theirs. No, I went and picked up my bow this morning. It's I've been shooting recurve for a while now, and I finally got myself a compound bow because we're putting together all this bow hunting stuff we're gonna go do, and I was like, it's time to get serious. Let's go do this.
And you're planning to go kill shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Awesome.
Which I've never done. I mean, I haven't even. I've caught fish as a kid, but it was all catch and release. So I've never killed the thing I've eaten. I think but I've eaten wild game from other people have killed it, and
Delicious.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And we're so into food that like I just can't ignore it anymore. It's time to go do it.
Really? I hate food.
You hate
Food is
cooking
stupid.
food?
No, I'm
thinking
kidding,
about
I'm
food?
kidding.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah, food is one of the cornerstones of life. Saying you're into food just sounds strange.
Yeah.
Like, does anyone say, "Oh, I don't like food"?
Well, I think people may say they like food and then they eat like shit, and so I'm not convinced all the time.
Ah, yeah, that's
You
a
know.
good point.
But then you've got like foodies on the one hand, and I'm not a foodie because like most people when we go to these different towns are like, you got to go to this restaurant, this restaurant, this restaurant. I don't go to restaurants, so the type of foodie I am is more like I'm a cookie. I'm a cookie, a chefy. I don't know, because I'm more into like get all the perfect ingredients that make you feel really good kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's two sides of that coin.
Yeah, and it's really odd that even the fanciest restaurant won't be as good as what you can cook for yourself if you have even a little bit of skill.
Right.
You don't even have to be a masterful chef to make food better than a high-end restaurant.
And you just don't know what's going into that. And the more I've learned about food, the more I'm like, damn, what are they putting in that?
Yeah.
Like, and there's a reason that it tastes so good. Because once you start eating stuff you've cooked, you're like, this is what good is. And then you go out and you're like, that seems like science good. You know what I mean? That seems like someone is
So
manipulating.
you're more of a
strange way.
rocky food as opposed to the Drago food that
I
you get out
wish
of
I knew
restaurants.
that reference, and I totally don't.
You don't know Rocky 3?
I mean, no, I don't.
oh boy.
I don't think I only watched Rocky 1 as a kid or something.
You know, it really has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu, but it's a metaphor for jiu-jitsu.
Do they hold up still?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They're powerful and moving, and
Okay.
the performances are 80s, but
Yeah.
acceptable.
Yeah. I got to give that a shot. We've been watching all the James Bond movies lately because I decided to read the books straight through, and so we're watching them completely out of order because we're watching by the order of the books. And I was thinking, like, as I was watching, you know, like Live and Let Die, which I hadn't seen before, and you think that like a movie from the 70s is going to end up.
That's the
being,
one with Baron Samedi.
Yes.
Yeah.
I assumed that movie was going to be like ultra racist. It's actually, from what I could see, not. But it was crazy sexist. It was really interesting to see that. The book, totally way more questionable. But it's weird to watch those old movies and be like, what was flying at the time? Like, what was going on?
Yeah.
It's not
You know,
a thing.
it's interesting, actually. You mentioned Jurassic Park before we sat down
Yeah.
here. And the original Jurassic Park is tremendously feminist. And
The book, you mean?
the movie.
The book even more so, actually, too.
There's a lot of strong female characters. There's a lot of weak male characters, etc. And then the last one I saw was Jurassic World, I think. And every character is just some sort of stereotype.
Right.
There's age stereotypes. There's gender stereotypes. It was really sad to see like a great franchise devolve in that way.
Yeah. I love Michael Crichton's books. Like, his are some of just the best science fiction you can read.
I felt like, I forget which one of the, maybe Jurassic Park 2 or 3, it almost felt like he was trying to write a screenplay, like he was giving directorial notes in the book.
In the book?
Yeah, but
Oh, that's
the
cool.
first one was quite good, and especially it talks a lot about fractals, which I love as someone into math.
I don't know anything about fractals. What does that mean?
A fractal is just a pattern where if you look at it, you don't know what scale it is. It's a repeating pattern, and it repeats across scales. So if you zoom in, it looks the same. If you zoom out, it looks the same.
Okay.
So
I hear people say that there are like a lot of fractals in nature, and I never know what that means.
some of the classic examples are like coastlines. The coastlines are curvy and wiggly. You go down to the beach, every individual like line or rivulet in the beach has the same kind of pattern. You zoom out and look at the
Oh,
earth,
okay.
it looks the same. The river systems look the same. So that's an example.
Do we know why that happens?
There's physical reasons. Something like beaches, it has to do with like the granularity of the sand and the viscosity of the water and whatnot, and it just translates across scales.
Wow. So this is what I was most excited to get talking with you about, is to get into the science.
Okay.
Because I went and I did a little homework, and I was looking around your website and stuff, seeing all this stuff, and I noticed that you go out and you put seismometers, am I pronouncing that right?
You nailed it.
In various places around Utah. And then I was reading into the controversy of whether or not we can predict when earthquakes are going to happen and all these things. Are those two things connected, like placing those seismometers relating to predicting earthquakes?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the things that's amazing about my field of study, is that the big question hasn't been answered. So a lot of fields of study, the big question's already nailed down. But yeah, we cannot predict earthquakes yet. And it doesn't seem like we're close. We probably won't get there in my lifetime. And the basic reason is because of chaos theory. So chaos theory is really, it was a beautiful development in the 60s, I guess, I think, maybe 50s. It came out of climate research, and this dude, Lorentz, he showed that with very simple equations, super simple equations, you could get dramatically different outcomes after like a certain number of time steps if you just change the initial conditions very slightly. So what that means is like if
like a butterfly effect.
It's the butterfly effect, yeah. And I actually have a tattoo of his original figures. They're called Lorentz attractors on my back with a butterfly. I think he might have even coined that term. Because his initial graphs looked like a butterfly. So the butterfly's wings are two different states that your physical system, I can't even remember what it was wind speed or humidity or something climate related. But just a slight change in 0.00001% change in the initial condition could get the system to move to one butterfly wing or the other. And so what that means in my field of study is earthquakes occur on faults. Faults are frictional surfaces, so slight variations in the roughness, the bending of the fault at a variety of different scales could change whether a tiny earthquake becomes a big one or whether it stays small or whether it becomes a medium earthquake.
So chaos theory is the thing that holds us back. Is there anything else that holds us back? Like, do we not yet have some technology that would help us to do the math and really understand that kind of thing?
Yeah. So this is one of the fascinating things about chaos theory is that there are equations in nature that are non-linear, meaning you double the input, you could have 10 times the output. You triple the input, maybe you're down at 4 times the output. Things don't scale linearly. But with chaos theory, even with linear equations, if you change your inputs by just a slight amount, you can end up taking different branching paths. And so with the earthquake example, like I said, if there's a slight kink, then this tiny earthquake won't go that way. If the kink was the other way, that earthquake would gain speed and become a bigger earthquake. And I'm talking very slight, a change in a bend in a fault that's a millimeter or maybe even a few microns possibly. There are people in the lab who can measure things with that precision. So in principle, if we could measure every atom or every molecule of these fault surfaces, we could get to predicting earthquakes. But that kind of technology just isn't likely to happen. Can we get there in a statistical sense? Maybe, and that's one of the things I work on. Actually.
Oh, okay. So it's all about a larger prediction. But is there some I guess what I'm trying to understand is there some push to be highly conservative with predictions of earthquakes, as in to go ahead and predict them if we think that something may be happening?
Yeah. So this is a big discussion. There's a tension between a prediction method that's sound versus a prediction method that's complete. So a sound method would be one that only gives you correct predictions, and no misses at all.
Mm-hmm.
But or no false predictions, but it may miss many actual earthquakes.
Yeah.
And a complete method would predict every earthquake and also give you lots of false positives. Okay. So that's the question that we have to decide societally. How do we balance that? I mean, there's some cost to a prediction. If you're going to stop whatever infrastructure is at play. So in Japan, for example, they have warning systems that get doctors to stop surgeries and trains to shut down, like their magnetic speed trains.
That's not even something that comes into my mind, but yeah, someone has been doing surgery when an earthquake happened, and that slip of the hand is a major deal.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
So like I said, there's a cost to that. There's a cost to the panicking and scaring people and having it weigh on their minds all the time. I mean, this comes up with school shootings. Now we have active shooter drills. Are those drills worth it, or is the psychological stress that they induce in our children worse than the shooters themselves? I mean, and these are questions that we have to grapple with. I don't know what the answers are.
Are those some of the questions that you look into, or is that more on the advocacy side and you're more on the science side?
Absolutely. You nailed it right there. I will be studying earthquakes even if it didn't help anyone, even if there was no societal relevance. That's how us scientists are. We're just compulsive nerds. I mean, not nerd isn't even the right term. Maybe we're somehow obsessed with some esoteric thing.
Okay. I don't know if I have that gear in me, to be honest. That's a rare one. I feel, though, what is nice about my current lifestyle is I feel very secure from earthquakes, because as far as I've heard, at least anecdotally, they talk about how much shaking like a travel trailer does when you tow it on a highway. Mm-hmm. And Andrea may know this number. Do you know the number that they say it's a something earthquake when you tow your trailer? Magnitude 7. Does that sound right to you, or is that way too high?
Well, so it just depends. Probably so. With earthquakes, the magnitude alone doesn't tell you how much shaking there will be. You need to also know how far away you are from the epicenter of the earthquake.
Okay.
You need to know how deep the earthquake is, and you need to know what kind of rock you're standing on. Okay. Those are the three main things that control the shaking. A magnitude 7, say on the Wasatch Fault, would be way more shaking than a trailer. Even like right here, the Wasatch Fault outcrops to the east. Where's the trace? Maybe 5 kilometers to the east of us. The earthquake's epicenter, if there was a magnitude 7, would be somewhere either beneath our feet or to the west, another 20 kilometers, somewhere in that range. But no matter where that occurred, we here would experience ridiculous amounts of shaking.
Yeah.
And we can quantify it. We tend to use accelerations, and because when things are shaking, they're accelerating back and forth. Mm-hmm. So one of the key values that we seismologists provide to like engineers and architects is the peak ground acceleration. That's how fast this point on Earth will move during an earthquake of a certain size. And with a magnitude 7, we could get a few G's, meaning a few times the acceleration of gravity. Meaning if something's not tied down, it's flying into the air completely. So yeah, your trailer's not producing that kind of stuff.
But at the end of the day, I still feel happier in that if I'm in an earthquake than anywhere else.
One of my professors, shout out James Dolan, he used to say that, and I'm sure he still does because he never gets new material. Shout out Dolan. He says,
how nice of you.
He says that earthquakes don't kill people, buildings kill people.
Yeah.
That's pretty much true.
Yeah.
In general, it's stuff falling on your head that kills you during an earthquake. So if you're out in the middle of a field and it's 2 G's, you're flopping around on the ground like a fish, but you're probably not doing much more than breaking a few bones at worst.
Yeah. So this is does this make you consider things like when you purchase your apartment, do you have to look at the building specs and go, hey, I know a little about this and I'm not trying to die? Does it ever, or even if it's not that, does it just sit on your mind all day? Like, are you anticipating an earthquake every moment of the day because you think about them a lot?
I'm not somebody who actually thinks or worries about the future much at all. So I don't. Now I do try to consider those questions if I'm moving into a new place, but in general, the infrastructure sucks here in Utah. So there's a lot of brick houses, brick buildings. Those are going to do really badly in big earthquakes. The earthquake, we had an earthquake last year. I don't know if you heard about it, a 5.7, and it did $2 billion worth of damage. That's a medium earthquake. That's not even a big earthquake.
Wow.
Yeah. So on the one hand, I think about it. On the other hand, there's not much I can do.
Right. It's like thinking about whether an asteroid is going to hit Earth or not. I mean,
certainly a higher probability of an earthquake here in Utah and Salt Lake City than an asteroid of any significant size hitting us. But there's not much I can do about it.
Yeah.
So no, when I feel shaking, I usually get excited. I'm interested.
Really?
And I start counting. So I don't know if you've heard these terms, the P wave and the S wave.
I found out about those this morning.
Awesome. Yeah. So the P wave is the first wave from the earthquake that arrives. S is the second major wave that arrives. And it turns out that the time between those two tells you how far away the earthquake is, approximately. It's like
counting lightning.
Exactly the same principle. Yeah. So lightning is super fast, or the light from it. The thunder is going to be the speed of sound, much slower. So it's like that. So when I feel an earthquake, I start counting. I feel the first motion, and then count until I feel the second motion.
I legitimately, like, if it was not a major earthquake, I honestly don't think we'd feel it anymore. Because on wheels, like, our whole life bounces around quite a bit. If one of us, like, walks to the fridge, the whole thing has a good little wobble, and you kind of get your sea legs for it. Like, it was hard at first, but we're both pretty used to it now.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd notice.
It
I
really
think we'd feel like it was wind.
It depends on the kind of earthquake, how far away it is, how big it is. There was a magnitude 7 earthquake in northern Mexico once, and I was living in LA at the time. I was walking around, actually getting a beer from the fridge in my friend's house, and the whole building started swaying very gently,
Oh.
just like seaweed, and everyone in the room started yelling at me like I was stomping around, making the building sway. So yeah, you can definitely misinterpret the feeling of an earthquake.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's fun. I feel like it is an intense thing to think about. I mean, I remember, like, as a kid, the thing was always like, oh, there's some fault line. Like, I grew up in Illinois, and I remember hearing about some fault line that was supposed to hadn't, had an earthquake in whatever 1,000 years, but it's due for one or something. And then, of course, I think that was like one of the premises for like 2012, the movie, right? There was an earthquake that was a major part of that, right? I mean, I think a few things were going down.
I have not seen 2012. I have seen San Andreas, which I liked, but 2012 I haven't seen.
2012 was the one where they really got like the streets to bend up, and it's
and
good effects.
It had John Cusack.
Yeah,
right?
John Cusack. It's so cheesy.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, and we geologists tend to like these terrible disaster movies like The Core or The Day After Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We like those a lot.
Day After Tomorrow is still a good one, but I
Great
can't
soundtrack.
handle like the wolf scene for whatever reason. I feel like that's where I really lose it. I'm like, what are these wolves doing here? Because like the humans cannot survive outside. It's way too cold, but it's so cold that I'm not even certain that a wolf could survive.
Right.
And then how are they coming into town? And then they
Right.
get on this boat. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And the CGI just wasn't there yet.
There are some plot holes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But those movies, like, you watch this and it puts you in a state where you're just I just feel like a little on edge. Like, I feel like I start feeling like a doomsday prepper, thinking like, because they're always saying like, oh, when the shit hits the fan, that's like their favorite phrase. But I don't know how you do what you do and then don't feel that way all the time. I guess you just
Well, I will tell
practice.
you something that does weigh on my mind, and it's not my own safety actually. I worry about northern India. So in northern India, you have the Himalayan front. That is a major fault zone. It can produce magnitude 9, even more, larger earthquakes than that. And those are just extreme events. The sort of the biggest natural disasters we can have. It's really the perfect storm. So what you have is this mountain front. There's a giant fault that dives down underneath it, and then there's a big floodplain where most of the people in India live. So you have more than 500 million people who could be affected by a single earthquake. So when that earthquake happens, and it will happen, because we can measure with GPS that the plates are moving, you could have millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people die, in the course of minutes from earthquake
Because
shaping.
of buildings falling down. and-
Yeah. So you have very soft, weak sediments. You have very poor building codes that are also poorly enforced. So even where they are enforced, they're probably not good enough. And just hundreds of millions of people, mostly living in poverty, mostly living in unsafe conditions. I mean, buildings fall down in that part of the world randomly, without
They
shaking.
fall down in America too. They
Yeah.
fall down in Florida.
Yeah. So that is the worst natural disaster I think that could happen, and that one really worries me. We scientifically are not doing as much as we could to mitigate that sort of thing. So we are not doing enough research. We're not installing enough sensors to get a handle on exactly how big or where is the most dangerous parts or where we should focus our efforts. I mean, if you even get contractors to use one more nail per 2x4 in a situation like that, you could save hundreds of thousands of people just because
Really?
the scale is so large.
Wow.
A slight change could make a huge difference
Wow.
in the outcome of the earthquake.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a recurring theme happening for me, which is that I keep being interested in like exploring the reality of what is really going on around us, and trying not to just like have these rose-colored glasses about like everything's cool and everything's always been cool. And so I try to make myself aware through things like self-defense. I was lucky enough to have Tim Larkin on my podcast. He's the guy that wrote the book When Violence is the Answer. Phenomenal book for self-defense. Just amazing. I bring it up on almost every episode of this podcast because it changed the way I see self-defense and just other people. And I'm constantly trying to expose myself to the realities of things like hunting. That's another one where it's like, I'd like to be exposed to the reality of what it really means to get meat instead of to go to the store and just pick out that package, which is how I've done it my whole life. This is a tricky one for me though, because, I feel like I can get into all the, I can think about stars and asteroids and space and all those things, and I can feel pretty cool. But then to think about the fact that the entire thing you're standing on is also not secure and could is just sliding and slipping around and changing, and to act like this small amount of time where we've had sort of recorded history is any example of what really happens is it's fundamentally untrue. Like we don't have a sense of how dangerous this all really is. And it's right underneath our feet. We rely on it.
That actually has a formal classical name. That's the fallacy of induction, which is the belief that things have always been a certain way, so they'll always continue to be a certain way.
Right. I've heard that in like betting kind of stuff, like where people will gamble because something was happening.
The gambler's fallacy.
Yeah.
It's kind of the inverse of that. Like things have happened a certain way, so they're due for a change.
Oh, I see.
Also fallacious reasoning.
Yeah, but I mean, it even gets into our language. Like when you say a phrase like you're standing on solid ground, that's a metaphor for this thing that's like solid ground.
Like you can trust it.
Right. Where is it solid then? But I got to be honest, like even the land masses that we have don't freak me out quite as much as like the bottom of the ocean and what's going on down there, which I've done on other episodes with marine biologist friends, because I'm terrified of water, basically. I like to drink it. I don't like to swim in it. But there is so much that we just don't know, and it's all happening. But like, could you help me understand why it's happening? Like, why is it that the land masses don't just sort of stay put where they are?
Yeah. So,
or are they moving towards something, or are they always going to be changing?
No. So in a nutshell, the Earth is like a boiling pot of water. So we have heat produced in our core. We have heat produced in the mantle, which are the inner layers of the Earth. Most of the new heat is coming from radioactive decay, and the rest of the heat is just from the formation. The Earth is still cooling off, actually. But anyway, that if you ever watch a pot of water boil, you get bubbles coming up to the surface, and then things cool out and sink on the sides. And if you get a really big pot of water, you'll see many different spots of bubbles. Those are called convection cells. And the Earth's mantle specifically is full of convection cells. Now, it doesn't happen fast. The mantle convects on the order of millimeters, maybe centimeters per year. But in geological time, that's convection that's happening. Hot material rises, it cools off, it sinks. And so that mantle, which is below the Earth's crust, which is where all the land masses are, that is constantly pulling the land masses around. It pulls them apart, brings them together, just moves them all over. Every way you could move something on the surface of a sphere, that's what happens.
Okay, so
and that's plate tectonics.
I have been a few years ago to the is it the Natural History Museum here at the university, or what is it called?
Yeah, it's the Natural History Museum of Utah.
Phenomenal place. One of my favorite museums I've ever been to, and I'm not even much of a museum guy, really. But I remember their display on Pangea and how you can sort of scroll through and watch, like, I think it was like on a globe, and you can like watch. Am I thinking of this right museum, or am I thinking of a different one?
Do they have that here? They might. I don't know.
I thought so.
I don't think it's. Maybe that's at Denver or Boulder.
You know what I'm talking about? It's like a projection on a globe, and you get to sort of scroll through. Andrea doesn't remember that specifically.
I love that museum.
She loves that museum.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a great museum.
It
I
is.
don't remember that. That may be there.
Anyway, point is, either way, maybe I'm picturing.
But you can find those reconstructions online.
Yeah.
There's a dude named what's the name? Ron Blakey. I forget which university he's at. And he has reconstructions over the whole history of Earth, and beautiful maps, beautiful animations.
Right.
So you could just Google Blakey plate tectonics and find
that is the current theory though, is that everything was sort of this one giant landmass.
It's happened a few times. There's the land masses have come together and broken apart at least twice, probably 3, 4, 5 times. As we go further back in time, we have less record of what happened. So
Okay, which obviously makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
So what's happening is that the Earth's crust, which is what all the continents are made of, the continental crust, is very light and buoyant, and so it rarely gets subducted or gets pushed down into the Earth. So you have this mantle convecting, you have this crust floating on top, and these convection cells drive things to crash together, and then when that stress happens, it can shut down the convection cell, and the convection has to start up somewhere else. And so things get pulled apart, pushed together, and it just happens repeatedly throughout Earth's history.
Are we messing with that?
No,
Because I've
we are
watched
not.
Gasland and I've seen the.
We're not at the scale of fucking with plate tectonics.
Okay.
No, the climate, yes, but the plate tectonics, the forces are just too huge
Okay.
and too deep in the Earth. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're not able to screw with that yet, luckily.
I also didn't mean this to just be like a tutoring session on basic science.
No, no
either,
worries.
so you don't have to do that. But I am trying to understand a little bit, like, why is it that the Earth is? I know from my 5th grade science class that it's hot on the core of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you mean when you say like it's still cooling down? How does that even happen when we're like in a vacuum of space? I'm missing that.
Yeah, so rock is a really, really, really poor conductor of heat. So, if you have a big like magma chamber, fill up with magma, that could take millions of years to cool off. So the entire
Specific
planet,
heat capacity. Is that right?
It's not the heat capacity that's the issue. It's the conduction, the
Okay.
coefficient of conduction.
All right. I tried, just for the record.
No, that's good. So water has a high heat capacity. Rock, I don't think has a very high heat capacity. But maybe, I don't know. It's been a while since I thought about heat capacity.
The only reason I think of that is because I think of like Alone, how they're always building like, rock fireplaces and stuff, so that it heats their whole house and stays hot even when their fire gets low.
Yeah, and the reason is that it takes a long time to heat up, and then it takes a long time to cool down.
Makes sense.
So that's because it's poor at conducting. Whereas metal will heat up immediately, cool down immediately.
And we're talking billions and billions and billions of years here.
Yeah, 4.6 or so is the age of the Earth. So the Earth comes together as all of these small particles, mostly ejected from the sun and ejected from other suns. And as they come together under gravity, they squeeze against each other and heat up. And they grind against each other and cause frictional heating as well. And then there's radioactive decay heating things up. And those processes just take billions of years to actually cool off.
Wow. So we are cooling in theory.
We
but
are cooling a little bit.
We
but
might heat it up too much on the surface before we're able to cool down on the core.
What happens on the surface has very little impact on what happens, even in the mantle, 10 kilometers to 50 kilometers deep. So, yeah, at the scale of the Earth, when we talk about we are destroying the planet, what we mean is we're making it inhospitable for our kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, actually, I saw a really good session on nuclear warfare at AGU, the American Geophysical Union Conference. I don't know when this was, 2010. I've been going too long. I'm feeling old now. But this was an entire session dedicated to a nuclear holocaust. If we took all of the known nuclear weapons in the world, doubled them, and then set them off strategically to kill all life as much as possible, what would happen? And they considered everything from the dust clouds raised and the radiation fallout and heating of the atmosphere, and just ad nauseum, every detail that you could think of. And it turns out we couldn't even kill the human race.
Because someone in Alabama has a bomb shelter.
Humans would survive. Yeah, we're not at the level of actually being able to destroy life yet.
Yeah,
we'll probably get there.
Have you gotten into any of this like North American extinction kind of stuff? I'm only a little familiar with this, but I'm the sort of asteroid theory that an asteroid was what was melted the glaciers of North America and may have killed a bunch of the megafauna. And
I haven't heard that. It doesn't seem likely, because that's so recent that we have really good geological records of those kinds of things. And the megafauna, it turns out, are probably mostly killed by humans. So the megafauna went there. So we had a series of ice ages over the last, several 100,000 years. And it would get cold and then it would get hot. Glaciers would come all the way down almost to the equator and then go back. And this happened over and over again. And the megafauna, some went extinct, some came back, but they more or less survived. And then humans show up around 30,000 years ago, and the megafauna all basically disappear after that. So it seems like from the best evidence now is that humans just killed the megafauna.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think this is like an opposing theory. It's well out of the mainstream, but I don't know enough about it to know if it's viable at all. But it's certainly interesting.
We have, like I said, our data gets less well resolved the further back in time we go.
Yeah.
But that's so recent, geologically speaking. 50,000 years is the blink of an eye. So we have the data to tell what happened. It shouldn't be a surprise. There shouldn't be something out of left field like that. Not that it's impossible, just that I expect we'd know it by now if it were there to be known.
That makes sense. What I'm trying to understand, and I see like how deep you go into this. Like I feel like I could probably ask you just about any question. Do you teach also, or is it all research?
I do. I teach typically when my department needs me to teach. But honestly, I am a little reluctant to teach because college kids are so lazy compared to jiu-jitsu students. so honestly, I
I've met a lot of lazy jiu-jitsu students too.
Man, my teaching itch gets scratched so well and nicely teaching jiu-jitsu. I mean, in jiu-jitsu classes, people show up on time, early even. They're stretching. They've thought about what I taught them. They pay attention to what I tell them. They try it. They're very focused and dedicated. And in college, kids miss half the classes and haven't read anything that I told them to read and haven't really thought much about it and are on their phones during class. And it's just a completely different atmosphere. And it's really bizarre when you think about the amount of money spent. I mean, $100 a month for a jiu-jitsu class versus like usually $4,000 for a class for a semester.
Yeah.
It's just unreal. You have 10 times the amount of money spent and 10% of the effort spent.
Yeah. I never got that. I wasn't that kind of student.
No, me neither.
That doesn't make any sense.
It never made any sense to me. I was the kind of student where if the professor let us out 10 minutes early, let us out, even that language I hate, I would go ask the motherfucker 10 minutes of questions. Like,
really?
Bro, I paid you.
See, I may not do that because I was completely overscheduled through college.
Same.
But I definitely wasn't missing classes. Like I was missing classes if I was sick.
Dude, I'd be hungover as shit. I'd be partying till 4 a.m. and I would get my ass up for that 8 a.m. class. I'd watch lecture through one eye. I don't know.
And it gets worse as you go on. I mean, as you approach your senior year, it's like, okay, but you also by your senior year shouldn't really be getting blackout every weekend. That's
right.
how I feel.
Yes, I agree completely.
Well, I don't know. I only did one semester of my senior year. We both were like, let's get out of here. We got the credits. Let's go. And we got out a little early. I was in a rush to get through my school.
I just love learning. I took extra classes. I had all sorts of classes that didn't count towards either of my degrees. I ended up with 2 degrees, Bachelor of Science in Geology, Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. I was a couple of maybe 1 or 2 classes away from a math minor as well, that I didn't have to take all those math classes.
But why do you think that is? Why do you think students are just so willing to blow it off? Is it because they're there for the college experience but not the college education? Or is it because it's mom and dad's money, it's not their money? Or?
Yeah, there's several factors, but I think societally we have become confused by the symbols of things versus the things themselves. So to be more specific, the degree is what people are chasing.
Right.
And the degree is irrelevant. It's the knowledge. The degree is symbolic of the knowledge you've gained from your time in college.
And I would argue also that you can go a step further and say that degree can mean nothing if you have learned a bunch of other things too. Because like my degree was in theater, but I was really studying entrepreneurship, and that's what I walked away with.
Right.
It doesn't matter what was on the piece of paper
Exactly.
in that sense, as long as you got the education you were looking for.
And you see the same thing to a lesser extent in martial arts. People chase the belts. I've never cared about belts. Actually, the last time someone interviewed me about jiu-jitsu, they said, when do you get the degrees on your black belt? And I said, I don't really know. It's every 2nd or 3rd year. But they just don't matter. It's the skills you matter. I walk in, sometimes I have put on the gi after I got my black belt. And I put on the gi. I've gone into places, and some places will make me put on a white belt, and I could not care less. My skills are still the same.
Because you are a no-gi black belt?
Exactly.
So they want you to be a white belt?
Yep, which is fine with me. I'll still go plata people.
Yeah,
just the same.
That's a little strange.
It doesn't make any difference to me.
Right.
So those are just examples of, in society we don't value things like the knowledge, the journey, the development, the growth. We have an end goal in mind to most things.
Yeah.
That is detached from the journey, which is kind of backwards.
Well, I feel like I need those end goals, but I try to set them in different ways. So an end goal for me was noticing that like if a new person walks in, or relatively new, or only has been there for a couple of weeks, the fact that I could win that and I could get a submission, that means a lot to me. And until I was at that point, I struggled a lot because I was like, man, is this even going anywhere? But now to know that I could kick my former self's ass, that feels really good. But you have to set other goals. Like maybe can I go 5 minutes and not get tapped? Like just worry about that. But you're right. We have the bigger goal, and people are, you know what? There's this expression that I keep using over and over again, which is people underestimate what they can do in a day and overestimate. Wait, am I backwards?
No, I think
underestimate what they can do a day and overestimate what they can do in a year or a decade or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and so you really just think about like, I can do so much with my day, and let's not worry so much about that.
That's generally my approach. I mentioned earlier, I don't really think about the future much. So, yeah, that's what I try to do when I roll. I try to use a few moves that I'm working on that I want to learn better. When I'm studying earthquake problems, I'm just in that problem right now. I'm not looking at a long-term goal. I never even really thought about getting degrees. I just went to classes, and then one day I was close to degrees. I never thought about really my PhD as a goal. I never thought about being a doctor or being a professor. I just wanted to learn stuff, and it seemed like a good way of living in grad school to just learn.
Well, I think in a sense we'd like to be like, people are like this now. People are making this mistake now. But probably people have been doing a similar version of this forever. And there are people who are willing to have discipline and try to be exceptional, and people who will blow off every opportunity that they have.
You know, I've traveled a lot, and I see a big difference in the Western world, and especially the United States, with a devaluing of experience and an overvaluing of credentials.
I think that's an identity thing. I think it goes back to almost what we were talking about before, that it's like, this is now a part of my identity instead of like, this is something that I do and something I enjoy doing and learning about.
Yeah.
It has to be like, you can't say that you're like a jiu-jitsu expert unless you have that black belt. So you got to get that black belt. That's the only thing that really matters. Instead of being like, I really enjoy doing jiu-jitsu, and then who cares?
Yeah. And that's what it was like. I don't really feel any different, but one day I look around and I realize, oh shit, I'm an expert at this. How'd that happen? You know, and I definitely had this experience in grad school as well, studying these scientific problems. It's like, oh wait, I'm one of the world's experts in tomography now. Like, when did that happen? Fascinating. Yeah. Or I know more about this specific thing now than my advisor does. Like, it just happens.
Does the philosophy still run deep into the science and into the jiu-jitsu at all?
The main benefit of studying philosophy for me was the critical reasoning skills and just the naming of the ways of reasoning and the ways of reasoning badly, the fallacies. So it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you've been there when I've talked about how really Eddie Bravo's brilliance is in part just naming all of these things. He just names every little step of every move. And it seems kind of nitpicky or frivolous, but the naming helps you solidify concepts in your mind. And it's the same thing with philosophy. When you give names to fallacies like the no true Scotsman or circular reasoning or the fallacy of induction or whatever it is, those just jump out at you more easily and more readily when you encounter them sort of in the wild, in the way people talk. And I see my fellow scientists make all sorts of very basic logical fallacies regularly because they don't have a philosophical background.
Interesting.
Yeah. One of the main ones is affirming the consequent. So it's a really, really simple way of reasoning. If A, then B. A, therefore B. that is a valid way of reasoning philosophically. If it rains, then if it rains on Saturday, then I'll cancel my camping trip. It did rain, therefore I canceled my camping trip.
Okay.
But if we look at that, something that people do all the time is say, if it rains, then I'll cancel my camping trip. I did cancel my camping trip,
Therefore
it rained, which is not true. There could be other reasons you cancel your camping trip.
Right.
So that's called affirming the consequence.
And you're saying that's happening in science,
That
or you
happens
see that
all
with
the time,
people?
all the time in science. Like even my advisor is one of the best in the world. Shout out Yehuda Ben Zion. Just a huge, massive figure in earthquake science. And he said if there's a sharp fault, then you get head waves. We do get head waves, therefore it's a sharp fault, and that's not true. There are other kinds of faults that produce head
You
waves.
could only say it might be that it was a sharp fault.
There are other ways that you
Interesting.
can get head waves. So this is an argument I had with him, and it actually made it worse when I said you're just affirming the consequent. So people get mad when you
People
name
like
their
when you-
fallacies.
yeah.
People really get mad when you name their fallacies.
Yeah, it's true. I know. I just feel like I always felt like when I took intro to ethical reasoning, whatever, in college, and I got to enjoy quite a few philosophy courses in college. I always took them if I could, if I could elect for them. I think I snuck a few in that the registrar was like, all right, fine, that I don't think I was supposed to. And I always felt like that intro to ethical reasoning should have been something I had learned in high school. It's wild to me that we don't, because I see people struggling with it. Actually don't see it anymore because I don't use Facebook anymore. But that was where I saw people struggling with it the most. You read those comment feeds of people arguing, which I never argue with anyone in the comments. That's just the biggest waste of time. But you see them and they're trying so hard to capture some of these basic ethical reasoning thoughts, or just basic, like you said, like what is the fallacy that you're making, and they struggle with it so hard.
And just having a name for it would make that sort of thing easy.
But at the end of the day, okay, but I have a separate issue with that, which is that I don't necessarily advocate that would happen somewhere like in public schools, because I think that anything that is worth knowing needs to be sought out by the person who's seeking it out. So I don't know that you can force feed some great concept to people. You could look at any subject that you learn in any high school that's required to be taught by the federal government, and it's probably mostly nonsense. I mean, I don't know that people care because they didn't seek it out. If that makes sense.
Possibly.
So how do we get people to seek it out? How do we get those students to show up every day?
I'd have to look at the history of education.
Yeah.
I mean, education just in this country has changed dramatically in 100 years and 200 years and 300 years. What has the effect even been? So I don't know. That's not a field I've looked into. That's not data I've seen. But I suspect there's been some big changes. I mean, literacy is one. Most people were illiterate 150 years ago. Most people are literate now. Actually, I don't even know if that's true. Yeah. But certainly more people are literate. That's true, and that's changed the way society kind of operates. Yeah. So I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I really don't know if it's. I think what you just did is made a slippery slope.
Did I?
Argument that if there's maybe it's not the perfect or best way to get people to learn things, but that's not the same as it being useless.
That's interesting.
So. Yeah.
I think my argument is more that I don't know if any force-fed information has ever stuck. I'm not certain if any.
So that's I think that can't be true. Never. Surely some of the shit you got force-fed stuck in you in ways you don't know.
I cared about school.
I can look at friends of mine who are post-religious, people who have now ended their affiliations with their religion and still exhibit all sorts of religious reasoning and religious influence on their lives. So that's something that people are force-fed that surely does echo down through the rest of their lives.
That's interesting.
As one counterexample.
Okay. Well, I'll give that to you.
So again, I agree with you. Certainly,
how about this? It could be
seek
better.
out knowledge. Oh yeah, if
It's
you seek
better.
out knowledge,
Yeah.
if you're motivated, the way that, and this is the difference in jiu-jitsu, people are motivated to come learn. In college, people feel it's something that is compulsory, like it's just second high school.
Yeah.
And for sure, the way knowledge sticks in jiu-jitsu is an order of magnitude more effective than the way it sticks in college.
Right. And there's a reason you keep showing up to jiu-jitsu, even though it mostly sucks for a very, very long time, and maybe forever. I don't know. I'll find out.
It kind of does. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you keep showing up, then you already have that motivation, and it's clear that you want to learn and you care enough to keep putting yourself through all of that nonsense.
It is.
So it weeds people out.
It is nonsense. Yeah.
Sometimes the harder it is to get the knowledge, the more worth having the knowledge is. Sometimes. There you go. I'm not making a fallacy when I say that. Because not every time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to make categorical statements. And I generally am trying to qualify what I say in jiu-jitsu, in class, in whatever. I try not to make very black and white statements. Just in general, things are nuanced.
Do you think that's how... Well, I love talking nuance, but I also think some things can be objectively true.
I mean, maybe. I'm hesitant to commit even to that kind of statement.
Interesting. I got a book for you. I'll tell you off the air, though. It's not a popular book.
Okay.
It's a book that people don't like that I like, probably.
Okay. And you don't want to associate yourself with it? Is it going to kill your viewership?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear people's opinions about it.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people would not bother to read it and then would have an opinion on it anyway.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's not something heinous. I'm not talking like, you need to read Mein
You're
Kampf.
like, yeah,
That's
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, this dude fucking loves Mein Kampf.
No, I've read the Communist Manifesto. It's mostly garbage. It's just not a popular book. Someone would be upset, but they wouldn't bother to take the time to check it out.
Okay.
It's complicated.
I got you.
You'll like it too.
Okay.
Just remind me. Where was I going with that thought? We don't have to get, but anyway, that some things can be objectively true, really can be objectively true, and as far as we can perceive them.
I'll say probably.
Okay, that's fine.
But so in studying philosophy, it seems like the only really truly firm objective thing you can come to is that I exist right now.
Right.
So the Cartesian, I think, therefore I am. Like something is having thoughts. Even if they're planted there, I am something now having thoughts. And that really seems to be the only sure footing you can get to.
Doesn't that get slippery if we are, in fact, in a simulation?
No, because I still exist now. I exist.
Yeah.
I'm a brain. I'm some kind of entity in a simulation. I'm a figment of God's imagination, whatever the hell it is.
Does it change if it's all predetermined?
Whether it's predetermined or not, I still exist.
Okay.
My existence could be predetermined, even if I'm just a robot or an automaton. I'm still something.
Help me with this, because I thought that was Descartes. That's who I... Oh, yeah. Cartesian is...
Cartesian, Descartes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think therefore I am.
Okay. I was missing the French spelling in my head. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Because it's...
French. A lot of missing
I love the way
letters.
they count. Have you ever seen that video about how the French do numbers?
Oh, like 82, like 420.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
I learned French a little bit when I was a kid, so I thought it was retarded.
Yeah. Well, it's not
Wait,
great.
I'm not allowed to say that anymore.
Try it again. Do another take.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut it out. Screw you. I'm going to scrub through this whole thing. I actually do have to, because we brought all the cameras, so I get to go and switch all the cameras.
Okay, yeah.
It's fun. I can bleep it.
That's good. Bleeps sound good.
Bleeps sound like you didn't say anything bad.
I have plausible deniability.
Well, if you swear on the podcast, you can do whatever you want, right? And
right.
We swear.
Yeah.
Have we been swearing?
I'm sure.
Point is, French. No, that wasn't the point. Point is, you exist.
That's the objective thing that we can come to.
So here's what I like about the reason to believe that some things could be objective, is that if you consider that the entire world is subjective, it can limit you from taking action, because you can never make anything morally right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I don't love that view of the world. For me, I like the view of the world where you go off of the best information you have, and that means you can, in fact, make moral decisions, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, we that's functionally what we do. We operate off the best information that we have and try to make the best choices we can. Whether there's an objective reality or not, that's how we have to live.
I think that my beef is that some people use, and I've done it before. I had a whole episode of this podcast where we kept using the phrase "everything is gray," and I think I've since been convinced otherwise, because I think that you can use that as an excuse toward inaction or toward doing something unethical, because you go, well, it's kind of gray, everything's gray, nothing can really be right, so I can do something not great. I don't know if I love that.
Yeah,
I'm still working on it though.
No, I agree with you. And ethics. I mean, people have been arguing about ethics, what we should do for forever, really, probably as long as there've been people. And so the three main schools of ethical thought are Aristotelian virtue ethics, Kantian duty-based ethics, and the James Stuart Mill consequential ethics. So each of those systems of ethics is deeply flawed in some way that makes us feel uncomfortable. And those are the best philosophers have done for 2,000 years. There's really nothing better than those three.
Have you read any Pirsig? Robert Pirsig, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No.
His second book, which is called Lila, to me is the best thing he ever wrote. And of course, it's the first one that really takes off, but it's the second one you have to watch for with those kinds of authors.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is a metaphysics of quality. And it's really interesting the way he describes the entire world as things that have static quality and things that have dynamic quality, and how it leads him into defining quality. It's absolutely fascinating.
So he tries to build a metaphysics, okay.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. It's it's worth it. It's very, very long, but it's worth it. And he has such a crazy story too, because he suffered from consistent schizophrenia and psychosis and all these things, and he received like shock treatment, and his family history was really fucked up, and he's an insane guy. But it's interesting the way he breaks down like how he spent most of his life living in the reality that everybody else sort of prescribed, and was like, I guess that's what we're doing. I will live by your thing even though it's not the thing I actually see. Fascinating guy, but he didn't want to get his entire memory electroshocked out of him a second time, which I understand that.
Yeah, sounds sensible.
You can convince your psychologist that you're sane. Just leave, right?
Yeah.
Took a weird turn there. But I think we're capturing a lot of the things I did want to talk about, so we did get into the philosophy. So how does that all inform jiu-jitsu? Like where is the connection then? Is it just is there some type of ethical reason that takes place in a sport that is based around violence? Is it about something to do with building the culture of the gym that you want and the people that you want and what is right and wrong in your culture? Or where does it all come into play, or does it not at all?
No, none of those things.
Really?
I think that it's totally separate, that humans have evolved to struggle. We don't deal well with comfort, and you need to put yourself in some kind of struggle that's not dangerous. Jiu-jitsu is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
And then as far as the culture I want and what I think is right, it's kind of the exact opposite of what you just wanted me to say there. Like when we take it super seriously, when we make it a philosophical way of life and make jiu-jitsu ethical somehow, as in it informs how we should live. I don't like any of that serious stuff.
Well, that's not what I wanted you to say, but
so I think what I like
certainly what I was curious
is
about.
to kind of have fun, do serious things that work, put myself in perceived danger, and have all of my students in perceived danger that fulfill some sort of deep struggle instinct that we humans have, and that's the extent of it. I think that in a larger holistic sense, it makes your life better because you are fulfilling these instincts, which are very difficult to fulfill healthily.
Yeah.
And this is a healthy way to do that. And so that makes your life better. And you can learn things like calm. You do learn self-defense. You learn how to perceive much more effectively what's really a threat versus what's not a threat. Mm-hmm. And those things are valuable. But as far as a philosophy of teaching you how to live your life, I don't think jiu-jitsu does or should be concerned with that.
It's always dependent on the gym owner that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, and some of them have this drive to be a sensei in the life sense.
That's what I try to
jiu-jitsu.
avoid. I always joke, and I hate that getting a black belt makes you think that you are now a life coach, because you're not. What you've done is dedicated a lot of time and discipline and effort, and so you've probably learned some worthwhile life skills as well. But no, it didn't cure my alcoholism. It didn't cure my depression. Jiu-jitsu is not some kind of cure-all. I think it's a beautiful, worthwhile activity, and that's the extent of it.
Mm-hmm. You just went very serious on us there.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, well, why was Tyler drinking a beer? Because you offered me one, okay, for the record, people.
Yeah, no, beer's lovely. It's wonderful, as long as you don't take it to an extreme.
Beer is really challenging to take to the extreme, I feel like. Like I will have to pee far too many times to drink any significant amount of beer.
Oh, I can drink lots of beer.
It depends if you can pound a beer or not.
On my birthday, March 15th this year.
The Ides of March.
Ides beware. I I chug a beer and then roll for 10 minutes in a shark bait. So I had a new opponent attack me every 2 minutes.
Ooh.
For 10 minutes, chug another beer, attack me again, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. I ended up drinking 19 beers. I rolled for more than 3 hours, and I was still doing jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can definitely overdo it.
Yeah.
with one beer.
Yeah. That's different strokes, man. I
Yeah.
certainly can't.
Yeah.
I have no chance of that.
Yeah, I only peed once, too.
That's insane. Well, you're not drinking enough water.
Probably.
Probably.
It's potential.
I've been honestly pretty happy that I haven't been dying up here. I assumed when we came out I'd struggle with the altitude really hard, and it's been actually pretty okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it killed me when I first got here.
Well, we've been a little in and out lately. Like we were, you know, where we went like Minneapolis to Reno, and I was dying in Reno. I had multiple training partners in jiu-jitsu be like, you need to slow your breathing down. I was like, what is happening? Everybody seems telling me this. I feel like I was fine. No one's ever told me that before. Huh. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'm dying out here. And I didn't realize Reno was even that high. And then, so I guess maybe I was up to par by the time I got out. But the pace of your classes is faster than a lot of classes I've been to. You know, it goes straight from warm-ups that already leave you out of breath right into drills that were moving pretty fast. I'm always grateful when you're like, all right, go sit on the wall, because I'm like, yes, finally I get to just sit and learn, because I'm
good. That's good to hear.
Totally.
Yeah, I have a lot of difficulty kind of putting myself in the student's shoes. It's been so long. I've learned so much of grappling since I was just a kid. It's hard to know what I'm overdoing, underdoing, what I'm teaching enough detail on or too much detail on. So it's always good to hear feedback. So I'm glad. That's what I'm going for. I want class to be intense and consistent and also fun and not super serious. People don't need to bow to me. You don't have to hang on my every word. When I talk about what to do from a technical perspective, you should probably listen. But other than that, you know, I'm no great life coach.
Well, I think that's probably as it should be. But at the same time, I think there are certain people that are driven to it and can be quite good at it, you know? And I don't fault them for that. Like, I'm certain that there are gym owners out there who really have that role and play that role,
well,
and have that father-like role. To
good friend, Richie Martinez, the boogeyman, at 10th Planet San Diego, he gives like a Tony Robbins speech at the end of every class, and it really fires you up. It makes you want to train better. And I kind of wish I could do that, but at the same time, I just don't have anything remotely like that level of certainty about anything in order to be able
to. That's the philosophy background.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly. I don't have much feeling of certainty in anything.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, well, I mean, that's just a matter of you saying, like, these are what my strengths are and what I'm into, and this is my fucking gym, and so this is how I'm going to roll.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had those speeches given to me before that I feel very strange when they're given to me.
Yeah.
And
they can fall flat.
They can fall flat. It depends. It certainly depends on the authority of the person giving it to you too, and how much I know about that person's life. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know, man. Maybe we should flip this. You know, you teach me the jiu-jitsu, and I'll give you the motivational speech. And again, not to pump my own ego up about that, but yeah, it does happen. And so some people it's a great fit for. And if you can really give a Tony Robbins moment and make someone break down and cry and be like, this is what you need to do, man, then you should do it. That's great. You know. Who cares?
Yeah, Boogie has me wanting to invade Brazil half the time. You know, I love
Brazil.
Well, you know, just like we're taking over jiu-jitsu kind of a deal. Like the 10th Planet mindset is where it's at.
Sure.
And, you know, and it's kind of funny because he's almost using the traditional methods of that real authoritarian style, but preaching an open mind from a technical perspective and fluid movement and things like that. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Hickson Gracie, who I've always been stoked that my last name sounds like his name, was sort of that. I don't know that sensei is the right word, and I don't know enough about the guy to say, but he was certainly inspirational to people that like health and yoga and outdoors living, and you know, a lot of those things could tie into this thing. You know, that making it about it being an art form, which I always thought was really cool.
Yeah. Well, and you know, something I see, Hickson was on Joe Rogan's podcast with Eddie Bravo, and he was like, "Hey, Eddie, come show me the rubber guard." Right. You know, this guy's widely considered the best ever, and he's happy to learn from, you know, my pothead sensei. So,
right.
You know, it's great.
How did you end up getting connected with 10th Planet? When did that
So
happen?
I did my first jiu-jitsu class under Eddie Bravo. I was a first-year grad student in LA. I moved from Oklahoma to LA to go to the University of Southern California, and they had not a real NCAA wrestling team, but a wrestling club that could still compete. So I went to compete at wrestling tournaments and stuff. I was just missing competing. And one of the people in the club said they did jiu-jitsu with Eddie Bravo. And I said, oh, I've seen that guy on the scorecards for UFC. And they took me up there, and I just stuck with it. And grad school was so miserable. I was training probably 4, 5, 6 days a week in jiu-jitsu and lifting and running and just basically trying to do anything I could to get out of my my like dark basement office.
But it's like that balance you talk about where like however much scholarly you've got going on, you need something physical.
Exactly. And so it just made sense right away. And Eddie was so it's funny because he seems out there and crazy in a lot of aspects, and yet he's methodical and precise and specific with jiu-jitsu. And he's innovative, but in very structured and sensible ways with his jiu-jitsu. And the way he's the best teacher of jiu-jitsu I've ever seen. So I just stuck with him all the way to black belt until I had to move away after I graduated, and just loved it.
Wait, how long were you in grad school for?
6 years, just about.
That's as long as your jiu-jitsu journey to black belt was 6 years?
About that, yeah.
Is that because you had that wrestling background? Like
the wrestling helped.
Yeah.
The frequency with which
the
I
amount of
trained
times you would
helped.
go, yeah.
But more than anything, I'm good at learning.
Mm.
That's the one skill I have, is that I can learn things. So I know how to like use deliberate practice in order to advance quickly in things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That must be nice.
I'm
Sounds good.
doing figure skating right now. I can do the basic jumps now, the waltz jump and the
Do
half
you
flip.
pick up a new thing like every few months just to keep it fresh?
It varies. I could be busy or overwhelmed with work, but I try to do new things.
Is figure skating? Well, no, I was thinking, is there an Olympic connection? But of course, we're in the Summer Olympics. What brought that on?
No connection. I've actually always been a fan of ballet, and I tried ballet, but I hated the culture. So, where jujitsu.
Andrew's giving you a thorough nod over there.
Were you a
She
ballerina?
was a dancer.
Oh yeah, it's kind of toxic, right? Okay, I'm glad to have some support in this then from someone in the know. But basically, it was the opposite of jiu-jitsu, where jiu-jitsu is humbling and forces you to chill out. Dance is the opposite. It's totally subjective, so everyone just thinks they're the hot shit, and they're never taken down a peg, and you're just overly empowered. So I really didn't like being in those rooms. And so figure skating is a lot of the same stuff from a technical and artistic sense without that kind of culture. And it's on ice. You go fast. You got knives on your feet. It's cool. I just like
That's
it.
fascinating.
And I like motion. I like the art of it. I like the art of jiu-jitsu more than anything, more than the martial aspect. The artistry is where it's at.
That's interesting.
So
Yeah, because half the time you'll be showing us something and you're like, yeah, I guess you could do this, but it'd be cooler if you did this.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's all sorts of jiu-jitsu that works that is boring as shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to learn any of that stuff.
Yeah, I get it. I also have that like I said, that realist perspective on self-defense, and there's a whole lot of me having to make my peace with certain concepts. Like, if you're in a situation, like 90% of the time, you should just run away from the situation.
Oh, yeah.
Black belt or not.
Throw your wallet at them and get out of
Get out of there. Yeah. But I was actually really happy because I don't think that you get a lot of aggro talk when you get into higher level martial arts, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody represent that mindset other than Tim Larkin, who wrote that book. But I finally saw a clip from Jocko Willink's podcast where he's like, if you're not touching me, I'm going to run away. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. As soon as you grab me, jiu-jitsu matters because I need you to ungrab me.
Yeah.
But until you grab me, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I will run away from you, and I will run faster and farther.
Exactly. And Jocko's about as bad a dude as you'll meet.
It made me feel a lot better because I feel
yeah.
like I've been in this vacuum of like, man, what is with all these aggro dudes that are like, no, I just kick their ass. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You don't know if that guy's got a gun, a knife, whatever. It does. Your jiu-jitsu
Or if he's
doesn't
got
really matter
AIDS,
sometimes.
And you punch him in the mouth.
That's dark.
And you cut
Maybe.
your hand and get AIDS. You don't know.
Yeah, you just don't.
It's not. There's no point in it.
It's a last resort, and a last resort that's really important to know, but a last resort nonetheless.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even a last resort beyond, like, you don't resort to jiu-jitsu if you have a gun on you.
Right.
It's still the last resort. Is
Yeah.
I'm going to use my hands because I
Yeah.
have nothing else.
Yeah.
You probably chuck a rock before you use your hands.
Yeah, totally. I'll hit
You
someone
know?
with a baseball bat.
Sure.
Or a lead pipe.
Yeah.
That'll be more
You
effective.
carry a pocket knife on you. That's coming first, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a strange thing, but there is such a culture of like, it's all about kicking ass.
So
and
I don't
having those
like
bar fight stories.
I don't like people
Yeah.
who view jiu-jitsu as if we're modern day samurai defending a code of honor. I really hate that.
It's even worse when it's defending women. Like, oh, I'm going
Oh,
to
yeah.
defend the gentle
Yeah,
sex, right?
right.
You're like, come on.
It's crazy. And the same kind of people post a lot of pictures of lions with like words on the lions. You know what I'm talking about.
It gets worse. I've seen a dude who's like, oh, I can't. Someone's going to know who I'm talking about. But, you know, some weightlifters who will talk about, you know, I'm going to protect my family. I'm like, I don't think you do martial arts. I'm going to be honest with you. The weights, it's not really going to help you a whole lot.
It's very fun for me to ragdoll weightlifters and just see them realize the truth,
Doesn't matter.
you know, the
Yeah.
reality of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you about my friend in Tucson, Heather Raftery, who's a black belt, and she was kind enough to roll with me for 5 minutes. And like I said, I think I have about 5 seconds to try anything.
Yeah.
And after that 5 seconds, we're done for. She has full control of my body. She's 5'1", I think,
Yeah.
at most. I mean, she's tiny, and that's it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it is funny how it's so aggro and it's so silly, you know. So then for you, it's about, well, I don't know. It's about the gentle art, I guess. It's about the technical aspect and the learning and the perfection.
There's really three components. There's the physical training aspect, you know, the joy of sweating, breathing hard.
And there's
moving a
nothing
lot.
like it when you have the weight of another person on you and you're wrestling. Some other system kicks in. I swear.
It is brutal. Like if you can run marathons, but you'll be gassed out in a jiu-jitsu room for sure. So the physical aspect is beautiful. The intellectual aspect, man, it really, and as the more you learn, the more it is like a chess match, setting traps, leading
Yeah.
people into strategies. That stuff is very fun, and it distracts you from the discomfort. Also, the more your mind is involved, the less you realize how tired, hurting, you know, how many times someone's balls have made contact with your face. That stuff fades away into the background when you're thinking of the art of it.
Yeah.
And then it's humbling. So the aggro thing I don't really get, because by the time you're a high level at jiu-jitsu, you've been strangled 1,000 times. I don't know how you're still cocky at all.
Right.
You've had to come to terms with your own frailty and mortality many, 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 many times.
Right.
So those three together are really, you know, the humility aspect is completely unique. There are some things that have physical and intellectual demands in the same way, but nothing humbles you the way jiu-jitsu does.
Yeah. It's like you actually have to take pride in just showing up and trying.
Yeah,
That's the only thing you'll be able to take pride in.
that's right.
Is that you showed up. It's when participation trophies are actually very important because you're like, listen, I participated all fucking year.
Absolutely.
And you can be proud of that,
Absolutely.
because you're certainly not going to win.
But the artistry of it is these days what I really like. Just doing crazy things with my body and my opponent's body.
Yeah.
Doing unexpected things. That's what I want to do, is push the boundary, stir the pot, you know, put my students out there in the world with the same philosophy. That's what I like.
Do you think it's still evolving? I don't know enough. I haven't been in it long enough to know.
I say this all the time. The jiu-jitsu we're doing now will get smoked by the jiu-jitsu in 10 years.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It seems like one of those things that, you know, as a beginner, I'm stepping into the ocean. It's like, this ocean couldn't get any bigger. It's already an ocean.
The meta game evolves so rapidly. You know, like nowadays, the honey hole people aren't even using it. It's not even effective anymore. And 5 years ago, if you knew the honey hole at all, you were crushing people with it. It's just crazy the way this sport evolves, and how many things that I was told you should never do that now you should almost always do. You know, one simple example is that you're told to always look for the underhook when you're on top. But if you look for the underhook on me, I'm putting you in rubber guard from any position.
Interesting.
And I'm going to choke you because of that. So,
Yeah, because you exposed that shoulder. And
yeah,
So.
yeah. And that's just one example. But yeah, the honey hole, now people can just turn away from it and then pull out the inner ankle and counter it.
Yeah.
It's really crazy how
The
quickly it
the
evolves.
leg stuff is hard for a beginner because I don't even know where to start with all
I
of it.
actually don't
you
agree.
know?
I think the leg entanglements are so easy to systematize and organize mentally that it's almost the best place to start.
I would love to buy your DVD then.
Yeah.
Let's make one.
I should probably make one at some point. But no, have you been to any of my Saturday classes?
No.
Yeah, I have a
I gotta
really
pick my days wisely, or else I can't even roll.
no, I understand, but I have a really simple hierarchy of the legs. So outside or inside ashigurami is at the lowest end. The 90-10 position is at the high end, and I have a whole hierarchy of in between and how to transfer amongst them all, and when we should transfer amongst them all. And it's so like systematized that it's a great way to actually get into jiu-jitsu.
I don't think anybody should say what you should or should not learn up front. Like, I think that's super silly. The gyms I've been to where it's like, we don't leg lock until you're a blue belt. I'm like, why?
That's crazy.
You know,
It's crazy.
Throw it all at me.
At
whatever
least blue
sticks.
belt. Most gyms say purple belt.
Yeah, but it does get complex, you know, from the perspective of someone who's like, listen, I'm just trying to learn what side control means, and then someone's grabbing my leg all of a sudden. Now I feel like I'm playing a totally different game, and I got to learn both at once. And you know, but that is what it is. That's part of it. And again, it's like you said, it's I don't come there for my own ego, other than to say that I went. And so the more you throw at me, just keep it coming, I guess.
Yeah, and you know, I do follow this weekly or bi-weekly curriculum that I set so for exactly that reason, so we don't get lost.
Right.
So we're all on the same page for weeks at a time and focused in the same way on the same parts of the system and same parts of the game. That's the way I do it on purpose.
I'm really into that.
Yeah.
I don't get to participate much in that usually because
A lot of gyms,
how often we bounce.
well, and a lot of gyms don't even have that. They'll just
Right.
do one thing on day one, random thing the next day, random
Yeah.
thing the next day. And yeah, that I mean, I won't learn a new move if I rep it 10 times. I've got to rep
Right.
it for a few days, repeat it, try it in sparring, have it fail, rep it a few more times,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no magic way to learn just because I'm a black belt. I still have to learn the same way I learned the rest of it.
But the nice thing is, at least you like learning. At least you're into it.
Yep.
I can't imagine life is too easy if you really have an aversion to learning new things. But I think a lot of people find themselves feeling that way. You have to hack that system and change it, or else you will never change.
I mean, I'm a scientist. I'm a professional learner, and my advisor, Yehuda Ben Zion, he told me something that really stuck with me. He asked me, "Do you know what the hardest part about science is?" And I don't know. There's a lot of superficial answers you could give, like the mathematics, the quantification, the uncertainty, and the data, etc. But he said it's the confusion. If you're really doing science, you're confused. You don't know the answer. And in fact, nobody knows the fucking answer because it's science. You're pushing the boundary. You're moving in a new direction, and the answer is simply not known, and you're trying to figure it out. So you're always going to be confused. You're always going to feel stupid. And that's the literal hardest thing about science. It's just being confused and feeling stupid every day that you're doing it.
Well, science and jiu-jitsu both, and philosophy and all the other good things. There's other thing I was going to ask you about, which was I noticed on your website you did this thing that was about precarious boulders?
Precariously balanced rocks.
Precariously
PBR.
balanced. Yeah. Is this something you still do or still into?
It's been on hold for a while, especially with COVID happening. But yeah, the basic idea is great. You go, you find one of these rocks, the boulder that's balanced on a pedestal, and you look at that and you're like, damn, it looks like wind could knock that over. And then you go, wait a minute, there's an active fault 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers away. Like, what can this boulder tell us about earthquakes on that fault? And it's pretty straightforward. If the boulder's there, it hasn't been knocked over. And so we go, we make a 3D model. We usually fly a drone in a circle around it, do structure from motion or photogrammetry. It's called. These are all standard techniques that even like Google has a hand in nowadays. But you just take photos from every angle and make a 3D model. And then we put it in a physics simulator, shake the thing, see when it breaks. And we get that quantity we talked about earlier, the peak ground acceleration. We know that that spot where the boulder is has never exceeded that during the lifetime of the boulder. So it's like a reverse seismometer. It tells us what earthquake has not happened.
Right. I was really digging this because I really like the crowdfunding. Did you cut yourself on the mic?
No. I cut myself figure skating.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I fell and then sliced myself open with my own skate.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So like it goes hand in hand. As long when you're pushing the boundary, you're gonna fail.
Yeah, you're gonna get hurt.
So
are you doing a class or are you just teaching yourself?
both.
Tutor.
Yeah, I have a class.
Jeez. Anyway, my point was, I love the idea that this is some sort of crowdsourced thing where people can contribute into the science here. Do you have anything like that going on? Are you still doing that, or is there anything I can plug for people to
Oh my God, yeah.
get involved with?
I wish I had something right now. Like I said, it's still on hold. The university's not letting us use citizen scientists in general right now. But yeah, that's something I love. That I wanted people to just email me pictures of rocks that they find all over Utah, or really all over America. If you find one of these boulders perched on a pedestal, if it's not near a fault, that still gives us a null data point. Like, hey, look at how precarious they can get when there's no earthquakes.
Yeah.
That's also interesting data. So yeah, if anyone's out there listening to this and you see a precariously balanced rock, you can email it to me, amir.allam@utah.edu.
Perfect. If you ever get other things going, just come back on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. So I'll plug whatever you want, man. And when you get that leg lock DVD going, DVD. I love that. I feel like I'm calling it DVD because you know what I mean. Of course it's online. But when you say DVD, people get that it's an instructional course, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to hook that up. And I got to tell you about my secret book. Secret book time.
Okay, secret book time.
I give people a lot of books on this podcast. They read them all and then ask me about the secret book, and then I'll tell someone about it.
Okay.
Where can people find you online on the social media? Where do you want them to follow and check you out?
I'm not on social media. I hate social media. I think it's mostly a waste of time. You can see the gym, so you can stay updated on our schedule, see the fun we're having in there at Instagram 10th Planet SLC.
Do you want me to get it so we get it right?
I don't even know. And I myself, I used to do a lot of like Facebooking and Instagramming about earthquakes, but I don't.
Off that now?
Yeah, I think
it's you should get a Discord going or something where you can control who's
I
in
don't
there.
even know what that is.
Oh, I'll tell you about it. All right, it's 1010P Salt Lake City spelled out.
10P Salt Lake City.
10P Salt Lake City. So go check it out. See what's up. It's been a lot of fun, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having me in Salt Lake City. Just
Beautiful
putting
place.
up with me and letting me.
I've just been looking at the
roll.
mountains over your shoulder in the background.
Yeah, that's nice. I've been looking at the drawings on your fridge, so it's almost as nice. For sure. Everybody, as always, thanks for listening. You can subscribe and do all those nice things. We got the video version on YouTube if you want to see any of this. We did do a pretty video on this one, which is kind of fun. Andrea came with me and set up all the cameras. I think we're going to do that a little more often on certain interesting episodes. So, yeah, I missed that entirely.
Oh, I just blew
had a
kiss.
moment. Oh, see, you don't get that in the audio version of the podcast, people, which is why you need to go get yourself the video version. Get all of Amir's, intricate details of his life, and you can see him bleeding and all sorts of things. So, thanks for listening again. As always, folks, we will see you on the next episode.